I'm Pat Dooris. Welcome to The Story. 2 days from now, the window to file for statewide political positions in Oregon is going to open up. It's the beginning of the campaign season with lots of politicians hoping to win outright on the primary ballot, which takes place on May 21st of 2024. If not, the top two will go on to the November general election. There's lots of positions open, from Congress to district attorney, the attorney general, secretary of state, state treasurer, and a whole bunch more. And one of the politicians announcing tonight is hoping to make history. And that's our big story. Elizabeth Steiner, a medical doctor and key budget writer in the Oregon Legislature, is going to run for state treasurer. Her official announcement will come tomorrow, but because you're the smartest news audience in the Northwest, you get to learn about it right now.
I am running for state treasurer.
Okay, and why?
I'm running because being treasurer in the right way can help Oregon be the strongest, healthiest state in the nation, which has always been my goal. As a family physician and as the state's chief budget writer for over 5 years now, I've seen the toll that financial insecurity can take on people, leading to physical and emotional, problems. Many Oregonians are one unexpected medical expense away from missing a car payment, losing their home, or not being able to pay for childcare. And if we can help Oregonians build financial security, we can prevent a lot of problems and break multi-generational cycles of poverty.
So that all sounds great, except I think most people, when they think of the treasurer's office, they think PERS and billions invested. They don't think personal savings. How?
Yeah, it's absolutely true that the treasurer is responsible for making sure that the public employee retirement fund is invested well and continues to grow, and so that we can meet our obligation for Oregon's retirees. In addition, the treasurer is also responsible for some very important savings programs, including what we call the college savings program, but it can also be used for any kind of post-high school education. It is also possible that we could develop other programs, voluntary programs that people could participate in to help them save for a rainy day, just as I've helped the state do.
Although it sounds simple, but if people had the money to save, it seems like they'd already be saving.
Well,
it's not that they don't have a program.
That's sort of true. And it's also true that most people don't have a lot of financial education. Most people have not been given the tools they need to make the right choices, the best choices for themselves and their families in the future. Steiner is a Democrat. If elected, she would make history as the first woman to hold the office of state treasurer in Oregon. As I mentioned earlier, she started her professional life as a doctor. She said she loved being a family practice doctor, but then was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, or MS, in 1994 and got very sick in 2001, which made it difficult for her to continue with family medicine. Instead, she got involved in other types of medicine, from clinic work to teaching medical students, and then eventually joined the world of politics, where she could influence health policy and fiscal policy. And she dug in deep. She's the lawmaker who walked us through the state budget during the last legislative session. She patiently explained the various budgets and different types of bonding. As a co-chair of the legislature's Budget Committee Ways and Means, she has a good grasp of how the money moves. Oregon's current treasurer is Tobias Reed. He will have to leave office at the end of next year because of term limits. Last year, he faced an effort by some lawmakers to force the Treasury to pull its pension money out of companies that are not green and good for the environment. I asked Steiner where she stood on that issue. This is one of those truth lies in between questions, which is to say I strongly support making Oregon and the whole world cleaner and greener and cooler and reversing the impact of climate change. That means helping companies that are big polluters move towards cleaner technology. One of the ways you do that is to use your power as a shareholder, and the treasurer is a big shareholder in a lot of these companies, to push them to make these green investments. And there are plenty of examples nationwide of investors pushing brown companies to move towards green technology.
And you think that's more effective than disinvesting?
Yeah, here's the problem. If you invest solely in green companies, they don't have a lot of room to cut their emissions. But if you invest in brown companies and push them to move toward clean technology, even a relatively small reduction in their emissions makes a big difference in the world.
And so I think we need to think about that. It's also hard if, as Treasury does for the pension fund, you invest in index funds, for example, and you don't get to pick every stock that's in there. You don't get to say, well, I'll only invest in this fund if you pull out all the fossil fuel investments.
Now, we expect more candidates will be announcing soon. We'll be watching, and if there is another major candidate for treasurer, we're going to invite them to sit down as well. We want to also profile them to bring you the options that you'll have on the ballot in 2024 for the manager of the money here in Oregon. Speaking of Oregon's treasurer, the current person in that role, Tobias Reed, has joined up with the Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, to file a lawsuit against the board of directors of the Fox Corporation. That's the parent company of Fox News. We first told you about this 3 months ago when Reed and Rosenblum headed down this path to consider whether Fox's board hurt Oregon's investments by allowing its news show to make false claims about the 2020 presidential election. Well, the time to consider is apparently over, and now they have filed suit today. In June, Treasurer Reed told us the state had just under $12 million invested in Fox. The lawsuit alleges that Fox's board knew that Fox News promotion of election lies created, quote, significant exposure to defamation charges, and that Fox made no good faith efforts to mitigate that defamation risk. Fox settled the lawsuit from Dominion Voting Machine Company to the tune of $787 million. That's what they paid out. And there are other lawsuits against Fox that have not yet been decided, meaning, you know what, they could be on the hook for even more payouts, which could affect investors even more, investors like the state of Oregon. In a statement today, Treasurer Tobias Reed wrote, "Our responsibility to safeguard the retirement investments of Oregon's public servants is of the utmost importance. We aim to hold Fox's board of directors, including Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, accountable for their decisions. We believe that this action is necessary in fulfilling our obligation to our beneficiaries." And for those of you who are thinking, hey, wait a minute, this lawsuit is probably just politically motivated, we asked the treasurer about that earlier this summer. And I can just hear critics from the right, for example, saying, oh, you just want to do this because you're part of a progressive state and you want to take a shot at a conservative media.
We're interested in making sure that our investments are being well managed, that the boards of companies are meeting their obligations, that they're looking out for their shareholders. We do this in a variety of places, and that's consistent with our obligation to the 400,000 beneficiaries on whose behalf we're investing.
Now, it's worth noting that the state of Oregon is not alone in this lawsuit. New York City's pension funds are co-plaintiffs. They hold around $28 million in Fox stock. The New York Times reports the lawsuit does not specify dollars amount of damages that they want from Fox Corporation, but it adds to it the list of legal problems for the company. And though it's likely far from the biggest suit that they're facing, the biggest one, that's $2.7 billion lawsuit from the election technology company Smartmatic, which still has to wind its way through the courts. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on our big story from yesterday. This op-ed in the Oregonian over the weekend has you buzzing. It's yet another example of a lack of transparency in Multnomah County government. The author is the leader of a volunteer budget oversight committee for the Joint Office of Homeless Services, who says they're getting the cold shoulder when it comes to performing their oversight mission. Now, some of the things he told us was that the county's refusing to answer certain questions, and when he asked if there's a plan to end homelessness, he says they just laughed. And that did not sit well with many of you. David wrote to us to say county and city politicians are huddled like hoarder trolls around the millions of taxpayer dollars meant for homelessness solutions while the problems fester. The transparency they claim to advocate is just another bureaucratic buzzword without accountability pressure from those with boots on the ground.
These people are Looney Tunes, Pat. They're absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and we pay sky-high taxes, absolutely sky-high taxes, and what is going on here is completely and utterly abysmal. It is rampant incompetence, and I am so glad that you actually shared the county commissioner's contact information so I could channel my frustration to the proper person.
I think a few of you did that. In case you missed it yesterday, here's that contact information for the county chair, Jessica Vega Peterson. You can email, the email for her is molt.chair@moltco.us. And the phone number is 503-988-3308. Please be kind. You can be forceful, too. We'll end with this email from Ellie. As a taxpayer, I'm furious the chair doesn't immediately want transparency and accountability. No successful business could run this way. Accountability is key to success. My sense is the chair is using red tape as an excuse. What are they afraid of? Hey, you guys, thanks for all the comments and keep them coming. When we come back, how do you feel about artificial intelligence? The next generation is getting pretty familiar with it right now, and it's reached them in schools. What the Oregon Department of Education is telling districts to watch out for when the story returns. The Portland Marathon is going to take place in just 19 days. If you haven't already trained for it, don't bother. It's too late for you. Might even be too late for me. It'll be the 51st year of the event. Someone who will not be there, by the way, Les Smith. For nearly 35 years, he served as president and event director for the Portland Marathon, Inc. Today, he was sentenced in federal court after pleading guilty to, as prosecutors put it, evading taxes due on the funds he stole from Portland Marathon, Inc. So, yes, it is connected to the marathon. The judge put Smith on probation for 3 years and sentenced him to 8 months of home confinement at his house in Texas. The judge also ordered Smith, who's 83 years old, to pay $411,000 in restitution to the IRS. Federal prosecutors say that from 2012 through 2017, Smith and others transferred money from the Portland Marathon bank account to his own personal bank account, that he also paid personal credit cards with marathon funds, even bought a $60,000 Infiniti SUV with marathon money. Prosecutors say Smith also set up a second company and ran marathon money through that one before putting a substantial amount into his own personal bank account. Prosecutors stated that Smith defrauded Portland Marathon Inc. and underreported more than $1 million in taxable income. Tonight, we bring you an in-depth look at a technological revolution sweeping through the classrooms of Oregon. Artificial intelligence, once a futuristic concept, is now making its way into the heart of our education system. From the picturesque landscapes of the Pacific Northwest to the bustling classrooms of Oregon schools, AI is rapidly becoming an integral part of the educational experience. What'd you think of that? Sounded pretty good, didn't it? Not too bad for a computer. Yeah, that intro that I just read, that was written by artificial intelligence. Kind of crazy. Our producer asked ChatGPT to write a TV news story about AI in schools, and that's what it came up with. It's a lot more wordy than what we usually write. In TV, we try to keep it short and conversational, but you'd definitely be able to tell if AI wrote our entire show. But like it or not, artificial intelligence is all around us now, and it's only going to get more prevalent. As your kids start the new school year, you can bet conversations about AI are going to come up in their classrooms more and more. Many of them are already using it as part of their learning, so much so that the Oregon Department of Education has released some new guidance for schools around it. It's not rules or policies. These are just things for school districts to keep in mind when it comes to deciding how they want to use AI. Specifically, bias. Since AI uses algorithms created by humans, they say biased information could become part of the system. They also want users to be on the lookout for inaccuracies, plagiarism, and copyright issues, as well as student privacy. And they say schools need to keep in mind that not all students have equal access to AI tools. The State Department of Education says there's potential for both innovation and risks when it comes to using AI in the classroom. For instance, let's hear from a student at a school in the Seattle area. He admits he was using AI to cheat on a math test and that he got away with it, even when a principal saw what he was doing.
I wanted to pass it. It was my final for that class. And the principal walked up behind me. She was just like, "Oh, you're using AI, cool." Like, she didn't think anything of it.
Maybe the students ahead of the adults? That wouldn't be the first time. That student says he did indeed pass the class. In another instance, a school district in New Jersey is using AI to try and stop mass shootings. They're one of hundreds of schools across the country using a program called Zero Eyes. It uses security cameras coupled with the company's AI software to detect guns. A team of humans verifies the images and alerts authorities. The idea is to try and get alerts out to school security and police as fast as possible. But the technology can only detect guns that are seen on camera, not hidden. Here in Oregon, the Oregon Department of Education says they're not currently collecting data on which schools are using AI or how they're using it for that matter. But they say expect both students and teachers will use generative AI, things like ChatGPT, which generate responses to a prompt that you give it.
But for example, creating materials that meet a wide variety of student need, instructional need, very quickly and with a lot of efficiencies, producing reading passages at various reading levels, producing various styles of writing examples for students, even translating into different languages for linguistic access. Much of it, I suspect, will take place along the teacher planning side of teachers producing and using the tool before being in the classroom. That being said, really depending on the age and what's developmentally appropriate for students, students could interact with it.
AI is likely to become part of the future of education and a big part of the world that we're going to live in. How do you feel about that? We especially want to hear from you teachers. Are you using AI in your classroom, or are you keeping it old school? Send an email to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, will you? The number 503-226-5090. Coming up next on The Story, if you've watched more than 2 minutes of national political coverage in the past year, you've heard the term woke. It's often used as an insult from conservatives, but where did that word come from and how did it get to where it is today? We'll explore all that is woke when The Story returns.
It's a word that we hear all the time in politics nowadays, woke. What started as something used by progressives was weaponized by conservatives to launch it into the modern mudslinging vocabulary. But where did it come from? How did it become what it is today? BJ Randhawa with the Facing Race team at our sister station in Seattle takes a look.
You've heard it.
Woke politics
and wokeness
do their own wokeist high woke agenda.
Over.
Political correctness or being too woke.
Here you have a woke company.
And over.
They've been woke for years.
But what is?
We will never ever surrender
woke
to the woke mob.
And I don't like the term woke because I hear woke. You know, it's like just a term that use half the people can't even define it. They don't know what it is.
People speak about the word woke as if it's a new word.
Educator and author Aaron Jones explains the origins of the word woke goes back 100 years.
We can see its roots as far back as 1923 in the black community. And then in the 1940s in jazz music.
The term even showed up in this 1962 New York Times op-ed titled, "If You're Woke, You Dig It."
He talks about how black folks had their own language within their own communities, and woke was just one of those words. And it was a word to say, wake up and be aware of what's happening around you. Wake up and understand your history.
The term now, a political grenade.
They just don't agree with President Biden's neo-socialist woke agenda.
So in Florida, we said we're the state where woke goes to die.
So I think now there's no good way to use that term. I think it's been so weaponized at this point that there is not a positive way to use the word woke.
So a word that is supposed to symbolize being aware of racial injustice has now been kind of turned into a weapon to stop the conversations about racial injustice?
Absolutely. And that word has been taken, and I think it was taken first really by white progressives to say, you know, we are awake to the social inequity, to racial inequity. But then when that happened, there was a backlash by the right to say, oh, you woke people. And it was weaponized then to say anything that is at all socially conscious is bad.
So we took to Seattle's famous Pike Place Market.
What is woke?
To find out.
What is woke? All opinions are welcome. I have a lot of opinions.
What everyone else thought.
Well, there's injustices out there. Hey, wake up and see what's going on.
It's liberal. It's anything goes. And I just don't think our country is going to sustain itself in wokeism.
Most people could loosely define woke, but their definitions were influenced by their own political or religious leanings.
Nobody wants to put themselves out to work. Why do woke become work?
If you're a Christian, your ultimate example of being woke is the teaching of Jesus. Was Jesus not woke? Of course he was. He cared about other people. He was woke.
Do you think there are still people that proudly carry that banner and say, yes, I am woke?
I think they're white people. I don't think black people proudly carry the banner of being woke. I think it's white progressives. It sounds really performative.
Jones says it's probably time to retire woke, but she encourages people to question the usage of the word when they hear it. It could stir an appreciation for other perspectives.
Show up with curiosity. Show up with an attitude to learn from them as well. There's a reason these people are really angry about this. There's a reason they have weaponized this term.
For Facing Race.
Can I get to the heart of their reason?
I'm PJ Randhawa.
So interesting. What do you think about all that? How do you view the word woke? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. thestory@kgw.com is the address. Or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. It just goes on and on and on. The good stuff is coming your way next. In the meantime, I'll see you right back here tomorrow night. And we're going to take a look outside the window. There's Cannon Beach. Beautiful sunset going on there. Now let's take a look maybe at the mountains. Oh, yes. Some of the clouds starting to roll in. Summer barely hanging on here in the Northwest. Have a great night.